आपण यूज करू.
Through the stories and songs, you will see how many different people throughout history work together to realize the dream that all people are created equal. Music played an important role in the struggle, and we're here to show how the power of music helped to shape history.
Our story begins on the west coast of Africa. Music has always been an important part of life in the African villages throughout the continent. Drumming, singing, and dancing unified the villages. And through these musical outlets, villagers rejoiced, shared stories, and sang of triumph and tragedy. Music was not only entertaining and educational,
it was sacred and healing.
Oh, go ahead. Our first song is probably one you already know. Its origins aren't truly known, except that it was first heard from the Gullah people, who are direct African descendants who live on the islands off of South Carolina and Georgia. Isolated for many years, the Gullah language is a mix of West and Central African languages, English and Creole. Kumbaya is believed to mean come by here.
That song was the most valuable thing you could take.
It could connect you to your ancestors and to their continued blessings.
Now, our journey takes us into perhaps one of the darkest periods in history. From the west coast of Africa, slave ships came to take captive Africans to their new homes throughout the world, including America. This journey is called the Middle Passage.
Below decks, slaves endured unbearable conditions.
They sang songs of sorrow. They longed for home. They asked for strength. They even sang songs that welcomed death.
Many Africans did not survive the journey across the Atlantic.
The conditions on the slave ship were brutal.
Slaves were often chained together and had very little room, if any, to move. Sickness and death were common. To try to combat this, many ships forced slaves to go above decks and dance for exercise.
And likely for the entertainment of the crew.
For those that did survive the journey, once they were in America, conditions did not improve. They wondered why they were here and what was going to happen to them. Our next song reflects the sadness many slaves felt once they were in America.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. A long way from home. Now, along the Ohio River and in Louisville, the slave trade continued. There's actually an historical marker on the corner of 2nd Street and Main that describes the slave trade.
By the 1850s,
Kentucky was annually exporting between 2,500 and 4,000 slaves down the Ohio River to plantations further south. To prevent runaways, slave traders would keep slaves shackled and in pens when not being displayed to buyers.
By 1860,
the state of Kentucky held 225,000 slaves. Now, 1860 was also a presidential election year, with many men competing for the job, including John Bell of Tennessee
and Stephen Douglas of Illinois.
Thank you. But it was Abraham Lincoln who won the job in November 1860, and by December, the state of South Carolina had separated or seceded from the Union.
A house divided against itself cannot stand Abraham Lincoln.
By early 1861, 11 states had seceded from the Union.
Kentucky declared that it was neutral, therefore remaining a battleground between North and South.
Then, on April 12, 1861, Fort Sumter in South Carolina was fired upon. The Civil War had begun.
The Ohio River became known as a path to freedom for many slaves.